So this is the 1998 TDI AHU installation into a Kubvan. You don't want to do this kind of a conversion without this book. It's got very critical, important information in it. It's the Bentley manual. So there were some mechanical challenges. The front engine mount in here, we needed to cut and attach the old Volkswagen Rabbit bracket to the front of the engine. The transmission swap, which is we're using the original 5-speed transmission from the Type 2 Rabbit. And so that conversion required changing the flywheel. And then the other thing that needed to happen was the design and fabrication of the gear selector bracket here in order to be able to get into the second and fourth gears. There were several failed attempts at an exhaust manifold downpipe, and in the end the guy's going to have to take it to a muffler shop to get that done. It's going to leave here without a connected exhaust pipe. So the other mechanical issue was mounting the drive-by-wire throttle body. There was a couple of places we had it originally, but in the end it turned out being nicely mounted just above the headlight on the battery bay area. Of course, the air intake plumbing was quite a challenge. Interestingly enough, 2-inch ABS pipe is the same diameter as most of the fittings that's supplied by Volkswagen. So here we have the air intake with the air mass flow sensor and the filter down here, oil covered filter in order to provide better air intake. And then all of the electronic sensors connected up, the air vacuum, the coming into the air intake connected. But and then of course we bypassed the intercooler here, sort of as a makeshift workaround at the moment. Ideally, the intercooler gets put back in there at some time later. It reduces the air intake temperature, gives you a little bit of boost in performance and a little cleaner exhaust. But for the time being, we've just bypassed that, and we'll have to source a different intercooler to mount somewhere, possibly in front of the radiator or something. So that was certainly one of the challenges. But the biggest challenge in the whole conversion was the electrical wiring. This is an AHU engine. This is the ECU. There's a ton of wires, 68-pin connector wires coming into there. You'll see there's a bunch of small wires here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which I chose to not connect to anything at this time, but perhaps utilize in the future for other engine monitoring that you may or may not want to do. Ended up stripping back the entire wiring harness back to bare wires in order to allow the best kind of routing and troubleshooting of where and what wires go where. So before we get too far along the harness here, we're just going to double back to the computer. And this is where I ended up mounting the waste gate bypass and the exhaust gas recirculating valves, and again retained the original wiring and connected all of that. Also down here is the air intake temperature, also a part of the ECU and the control system. So important things to know in the wiring harness is that there's lots of black with a yellow stripe wires. Those are typically power, for powering up the various circuits. They're also brown and white wires. You can see brown wires here all bundled together. They are typically grounds and are often just bundled together at different chassis wiring points throughout the vehicle. I've just joined them all together. There's a single black wire, which is kind of interesting, that comes from the ECU. It's pin number 38, and we're just going to swing over to see where that is. So we've just run that through the cable harness. It's a very small black wire. It's actually a positive, despite the fact that it's black, and is labeled pin 38 in the system, and has got a label called ignition. But certainly when you connect that up, it energizes items inside the injector pump body. So all of the injector pump connectors were original. But I have bypassed the fuel solenoid and wired that into the existing Kubvan fuel solenoid system. The engine lift sensors and various other sensors are connected as they would be normally back to the ECU. The 24 pin connector here that harnesses the glow plugs and some of the other engine sensors, and the coolant glow plugs, which is an interesting concept. That's been utilized. I abandoned the coolant glow plug circuit that was originally in the Jetta. Not sure of the real necessity of that. It's about keeping the engine, the passenger compartment, warm in cold weather. Not too worried about that with climate change and greenhouse gases and all that. So I did change, however, the engine coolant circuit to utilize the Kubvan one, and I changed that water inlet flange on the head to incorporate the existing original sensors from the Kubvan, and that seems to be working nicely. I linked some of that 24 pin connector and the 68 pin connector. I provided links to a diagram that shows what connections I used and which ones I didn't. So back to the wiring harness here. Of course, we're going to bundle this in a cable management system, and so basically put some brackets at the back of the firewall here to carry that through, along with the vacuum hoses from the system, and seems to have all worked out not too badly. The original compartment heater behind here plumbs into the existing plumbing with a little bit of rerouting. We mounted the coolant fluid reservoir up on the firewall there. It should actually probably go a little bit higher and likely would have to be moved when the air intake cooling system gets put back in. The vacuum circuit for the brakes fits in normally as it would have, and some other incidental wiring. There's a oil pressure sensor here and engine coolant temperature. Went to the instrument cluster in the Jetta. I've used the existing wiring, so not critical for this application, but I've left the wires out available in the event that there's something that needs to be done. The existing wiring here of the from the Jetta, from the Kubvan, connects into the fan system for cooling the engine, which is now triggered by the coolant temperature in the rad. And then the original glow plug circuit is back up here where it is normally in the Kubvan. I did have to reestablish the grounds and created a common ground circuit right here because I found that the instruments in the vehicle weren't working very well for a number of reasons, and that has resolved that issue. So yeah, that's it. So we're going to put the sheathing around the cabling to tidy it up. You probably noticed as we were traveling around the engine compartment, over on the left hand side here is where the diesel fuel filter is now. and also the windshield washer fluid. So a little bit of jiggling around with things in order to get it to all work. You need lots of bits of hose and brackets and screws and all sorts of things to get all this stuff mounted. But that's it. So we'll just start this up for you folks so that you can see how nicely it runs.